Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. This is the 80s Revolution, and we are going to have some fun talking more about wrestling figures, jumping right to the LJN collection. However, not the main event that the Funky Monkey is looking for. This is going to be a preliminary to the main event. We're going to talk about some of the accessories and non-wrestling figure related items that came out in the 80s, the mid-80s, 84, 85, 86, 87, that are very much associated with the LJN wrestling figures, the LJN company, the Wrestling Superstars brand in general. And as you'll see that this, the World Wrestling Federation toy collection really expands way past action figures. And I want to show you some of those things tonight. Some things you may have never seen before. Some things are, rare. Rare as in maybe you don't see that often. And, I'm going to show you some of those things tonight as we enjoy something a little different. Not a beer, but one of my old school standby, go out and, have a whole bunch of fun drinks. This is so if there's any Korn fans out there, Korn, K-O-R-N, this is what's known in the Korn circle as a BBK. If you know what that means, drop it below. BBK. This is a Jack and Coke. One of my favorite old school drinks, something that I used to drink a lot about 15 years ago or so. But that's what we're enjoying tonight. Nice, crisp, refreshing Jack and Coke. Ooh, little bite. Okay, so let's get right into it. First thing I want to show you is championship belts. Now, when I was a kid, I had, friends that we were all into wrestling, and so we would wrestle. Of course, we would create little characters of our own. And we would, of course, have matches pretty much all day. And if you're wrestling, you need a trophy. You need a championship belt. So we would make them out of paper, poster board, to be exact. Some of us had good art skills. Some of us didn't. I was one who didn't. So some of our belts were okay. Some weren't so great. And then one day, the World Wrestling Federation put out kids' foam belts. These are championship wrestling belts from the WWF. Now, this is the world's heavyweight title, the world's heavyweight championship, as you can see, made of a pretty cheap and breakable foam with some solid plastic plates and some pretty decent artwork and details. These were not sold in stores. These were only available through mail away, so through the WWF merchandise catalog, which was in the WWF magazine that was put out monthly. You could order these championship belts, or you could buy them at the souvenir stand at, like, when wrestling would come to town. So this is the world's title. Of course, we have the Intercontinental title on a brown foam, leather strap. So this was the Intercontinental title. And to complete the triad of WWF championships at the time, we have the Tag Team Championship. Again, never available in stores, only available through catalog or picking them up at a wrestling event at your arena. For me, it was the Rochester War Memorial. Okay, so those are the belts. This is one of my favorite sort of, I don't know, this is really a strange item. These are Wrestling Superstars decal soaps. These are soaps, 2 individual soaps. Now, they're not from LJN, they're from a soap company, Fulford Company. I have no idea who that is, but they do have the Wrestling Superstars brand and logo, which, brings up some questions. Was the Wrestling Superstars something that was exclusive to WWF? Was it exclusive to LJN? Not sure. So these are soaps, and they are actually real soaps. And so this package is openable, and we've got soap. Okay, you got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and the Hulkster, and 30 years old, and they smell like soap. Now, it smells like cheap hospital or cheap hotel soap, but soap nonetheless. All right, so if you want to shower with Hulk Hogan or Ricky Steamboat, now is your chance. All right, moving on. Everybody knows, every kid of the 80s knows what a Viewmaster is. And this is the WWF's, throwing their hat into the ring, so to speak, in the Viewmaster market. Viewmasters were these kind of binocular-looking things you'd hold up to your eyes, you'd point them up to the light, and they had these film strips, and you'd put a film strip in, and you would pull, this little lever, and as you pulled the lever, the film strip would turn, and you'd get a new scene or a new picture to look at. Of course, only visible if you were looking at a light, if you were staring at a light. So these just had pictures of wrestlers and matches and things like that. But pretty neat little gift set. Came with 2 viewers and 3 reels, which would be 21 pictures. Neat little Viewmaster item. Viewmaster, there's the back if you want to take a look at it. Viewmaster came out, if you were anything in, pop culture in the 80s, you had a Viewmaster set. You had He-Man. Any cartoon, any 80s icon pretty much had a Viewmaster reel. All right, these are just a few little gimmick books from a book company. I would always buy these as a kid at this thing called Santa's Secret Shop. Again, if you were an 80s kid, let me know what Santa's Secret Shop was. But I would pick these up, for like 99 cents. And they're just, fun little stories with pictures. These all came with stickers that are long gone by now, but just kids' wrestling books. This is basically a story of, Hulk Hogan defending the title against the great King Kong Bundy, and they kind of tell the story of the match, and just some other fun stuff. Stickers included. Stickers were kind of a big 80s thing. If every kid in the 80s had a sticker book. Just great stuff. LJN not only produced wrestling figures, but back in the day, Hulk Hogan, if they could capitalize on Hulk Hogan's popularity by putting his face and name basically on anything, it would sell. So, Hulk Hogan being the, strongest man in the universe, they capitalize on that by coming out with a Hulk Hogan workout set. So you too could, have the 24-inch pythons of Hulk Hogan if you would only buy his workout set. So this is the deluxe barbell workout set, which came with, I think, probably 20 pounds of weights, a bar, headband, poster, and cassette tape. Of course, you need a cassette tape to tell you how to work out. Then you had the deluxe dumbbell set, which came with 2 5-pound dumbbells, or maybe 2.5-pound dumbbells, a poster, a cassette, and a headband. The jump rope set, jump rope headband. This happens to be the power hand grip set. I don't know why these hand grips were, so popular in the 80s as a workout, I don't know, a workout strategy. But if you did a lot of this, you were supposed to develop massive forearms and grip strength, of course. But any 12-year-old boy in the 80s already had pretty good grip strength. Comes with Hulk Hogan headband. Very official, not very easy to come by outside of these sets. Pretty cool. This is actually the coolest item of the set, is this Hulk Hogan headband. All right, moving along. We've got a couple of other fun little items. Okay, so in addition to the LJN wrestling figures, the actual wrestling superstars wrestling figures, LJN came out with multiple other variations of figures. They came out with small 3-inch bendable figures. These are called bendies, which I'll show you when we do the figures. They came up with thumb wrestlers, okay, which I will show you when we go through the wrestlers. And they came up with these stretch wrestler things. Now, the idea was that the official wrestling figures were not very pliable. They were very hard rubber, very heavy, again, which we'll go over in detail when we talk about these. So the ad hook for the wrestling superstars figures was twist them and turn them into all kinds of wrestling moves. This was not true. You could not twist and turn the LJN wrestling figures. So LJN came up with something that you could twist and turn, the stretch wrestlers. This one happens to be Ricky Steamboat. So if you know about Stretch Armstrong from the 70s, then you know about stretch wrestlers. Same concept, a loose rubber figure filled with some kind of mystery white powder. No idea what the mystery white powder is. Could be anthrax, could be cocaine, could be baby powder. I have no idea. But the idea was you could pull the figures and stretch them, as you can see down here, and as you can see more clearly on the back, you can twist them and turn them and stretch them, tug them, pull them, tie them in knots. Sorry about that. So these, if you were a wrestling figure player, you were not really into these. You really couldn't have any good matches with these things, but I guess they were cool to have. I don't think these were super popular. They only made 8 figures. Now in the secondary market, they are going for a little bit of money. They're going for like $100 to $200, a piece. Stretch wrestlers. I have a few now. I had a few then, and I have a few now. I have Ricky Steamboat. I have the great Junkyard Dog. And of course I have your champion, Hulk Hogan. This one's pretty neat. Still has the Toys R Us sticker on it from, well, I have no idea what year, but the price point was $12.99, which is actually kind of expensive for 86, 87, $12.99 for one of these. But really cool box. I mean, just a really neat, nice displayable box. I really like those. I really like the boxes. All right, a couple other things. So a toy company called Winston Toys capitalized on the cartoon, the Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling cartoon, which I think aired for 2 seasons, 85, 86, I think. And they made their own little figures, but these are not these are actually erasers. These are pencil erasers. I mean, what a fantastic concept to basically come up with something that allowed your kid to bring his wrestling figures to school and have them on his desk. He had to have an eraser. What a better marketing strategy than to come up with a wrestling figure eraser. What a great idea. This is the Hulk Hogan. These are actually very pricey on eBay now. In fact, there are some that were very rare. Wendy Richter, who is the women's champion in the WWF, and the Junkyard Dog and Roddy Piper are extremely pricey on, carded. I've seen, a Wendy Richter carded eraser go for, close to $1,000, which is insane. But, just shows how rare and collectible these are. So this is your packaged Hulk Hogan, and this is your loose Jimmy Snuka eraser. Really, actually, a great looking figure. They're very similar to the LJN bendy figures. So these are smaller versions of the bigger wrestling figures, and these actually do bend a little bit more. So here's the eraser and here's the bendy. I actually prefer the look of the erasers to these bendy figures, but really cool erasers, very collectible, like I said, very pricey. Moving along, this is an interesting item. So back in the, so this was released in '87. If you've played Oregon Trail, you know what a floppy disk is. If you're a kid of the '80s, you know what this thing is. Okay? If you're not a kid of the '80s, you have no idea what that thing is. But this is the Commodore 64 and Commodore 128. It's a video game. It's a computer strategy wrestling game called Micro League Wrestling. And back in '87, when we had so of course we had Atari, which looked looked horrible looking back graphics wise. Then we had the Nintendo, which was a step up obviously, but nothing that we had at the time compared to what this game looked like. Take a look at that. Imagine being a kid and seeing an advertisement for this game and going, oh my God, it's like a live action game. Am I actually going to be controlling, these, live action, characters? No, is the answer. This is basically like a footage based game. You would select a move and they'd have a taped footage of the wrestler performing the move that you selected. I'm sure it was very choppy. I'm sure it was, a terrible play out. Probably disappointed a lot of people, but looked pretty awesome. I'm sure it sold a ton based on the way this game looked. And then you get it and you're a little disappointed. But Micro League Wrestling, a very early computer wrestling game. I'm a little dry, so I'll good stuff. Okay, this is kind of a neat item. This is actually like a tablecloth. This is a party pack WWF tablecloth, and this actually came with more items. It came with 8 3-ply napkins, 8 hot and cold cups, 7 or 8 plastic plates, and 1 table cover. I don't know where the rest is. It's open, so I'm assuming all those other parts are out, but what stayed behind and what I ended up grabbing was the table cover. Tablecloth, basically. So it's a party tablecloth. So you've got all kinds of wrestlers on here. I don't know the other wrestlers. I've never opened it. I don't know how many other characters are on here, but you can see good guys, bad guys. So imagine being a kid in the 80s and coming home to your birthday party and you got, the WWF tablecloth on your table and cups and plates and napkins. What a great birthday party that would have been for a wrestling fan in the 80s. All right. So this, before there was theme music, okay, before every single wrestler had their own song, their own video to come out to, wrestlers got into a studio and made an album. All right, Vince McMahon and WWF were masters at capitalizing on, on the market. People would buy anything that had, wrestlers associated with it. And this kind of started to turn the WWF into a more cartoonish, family-friendly, kid-friendly organization, and really set it apart from, Southern sort of good old boy wrestling companies, the Dusty Rhodes, the Ric Flairs, things like that. WWF really started to take off in a different direction with, George the Animal Steel and, Hillbilly Jim and guys like that, really cartoon characters. But this is one of the first, I think, examples of sports entertainment versus wrestling. Vince McMahon takes all of his guys and has them sing and make an album. So you've got songs on here by Hillbilly Jim, Nikolai Volkov, Mean Gene, the Junkyard Dog, Rowdy Roddy Piper. And, the rock and wrestling era it began in 85, really put the WWF on the map. When WWF teamed up with Cyndi Lauper and MTV, they got national exposure, and they got worldwide exposure, and they really took off. So this was probably, although it's extremely cheesy, this was probably one of their most brilliant marketing strategies, and it really pushed them to a whole nother level. Songs were cracking the top 40. Videos were being played on MTV. They had really made it at this point. They had really crossed over into a new market at this point. All right. This, in one of my other videos, I talked about freak out moments. I talked about, going to a toy store and just absolutely freaking out when you ran into a toy that you didn't ever know existed. This was one of my first absolute freak out moments. This is the LJN steel cage accessory that's snapped onto your LJN ring. I remember the day I saw this. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and I slept over their house a lot. And my grandmother basically gave me everything I ever wanted. She's responsible for a lot of my interest in toys. So when I would sleep over, she would take me to the mall and to Toys R Us, and I would always come away with something. Well, I remember we were on a hunt for figures. There were, I was aware somehow that there was a few new figures out, and we hit up probably 4 or 5 stores that were not close together trying to locate these figures, and I would keep getting disappointed at each store they wouldn't have the figures. But I ended up getting them. I ended up finding them at one of the stores, and at one of our last stops was Kitty City. And I think she'd already bought me like 4 figures that day, which were $7.99 a piece. So, she spent, a little bit over $30 on me already that day. Which in, 85 or so, 86 is, nothing to sneeze at. So I remember walking down the toy aisle, seeing the figures, and nobody knew I had them all. And as I turned the corner, a massive display of this was on the end of an aisle, an end cap. And they were all stacked and set up. And I turned that corner and I saw this set. Lost my mind in the store. I mean, jumping up and down, hugging it and freaking out in the middle of Kitty City. And it was a must-have item for me. And I think my grandmother saw the excitement, and I ended up with it. I don't recall, the details are not clear, but I am almost confident that this set cost $6.99 back in 1986. I could be wrong. It was no more than $10, but I think it was $6.99, this steel cage. It is just 4 little pieces of plastic. Maybe it was. But take a look. I mean, this is just such a great display piece. Take a look at the back. You got advertised. You got all your figures down here. You've got some, instructions on how to snap the cage together. But I'm telling you, I would spend equal amounts of time playing with this thing as I would sitting there and staring at the box. I mean, I would stare at the box for hours. And if you're an 80s kid, you know how important the backs of boxes are. All right, we definitely have many more items to go through. This is probably going to be done in 3 or 4 parts. I don't want to do one big, hour and a half video. I'd like to break them up so that it's not, you're not bored to death watching this. So this is part 1. Part 2, we're going to get into some more accessories. We've got some packaged bendy figures. We've got some memo pads for, notes in school. We've got neat stuff. We've got puzzles to look at. We've got lunch boxes, and then we get into the figures. So check out part 2. I'll be posting these all together, so check out part 2. Thank you all very much. Hope you're having fun, as much fun as I am. And at the end of this collection video, when I wrap it up, I'll give some special shout outs to people who have been leaving me great comments and sending me, private messages and subscribing. And I'm very thankful for all of you. And so, if you're active on my channel, I'm going to leave you, I'm going to give you a little shout out and sort of advertise your page in a show of appreciation for watching my stuff. So come back. Part 2 is coming up quite soon. We'll sign off part 1. And I'll see you for part 2.